All right, folks, our next speaker just lives down the road about, 10, 11 hours? 12? Something like that. Ryan Kolodziej from Wisconsin, where the cheese is. Last year he brought us some cheese. You bring any cheese this year?
Are you at the county?
No. No. I know he did bring some rhubarb, though. You have to hook him up with that. So Ryan is going to talk about diversity on the farm, and it's quite interesting. Ryan, thanks for being with us today.
Yes, sir. All right, so I don't have a bunch of jokes. This is a joke, but I don't have a bunch of them. So that's me there in the red, and this guy here, he didn't see it coming. But on the, wait here. Okay, you can see he's decorated, and he's got 30 years of experience in his field. Okay, he's got black belts in 3 different things, but he still didn't see it coming. That's because he wasn't diversified. All right? So this is serious, that you need to be diversified on your farm, or else you're not going to see it coming. All right? I'm going to read a little bit here because I've got notes. You know, we were young and ambitious once, and we didn't understand how to make long-term goals, and a lot of our first projects had the go big or go home mentality, you know, the all in or nothing. Okay? Now we understand that it's very important to start out slowly and diversified so that, you know, you can roll with the punches. You can make moves with your projects, with your farm, with your business as you're dealing with different market concerns. I just shipped a bunch of hogs. I got 40 cents a pound for them. Last year I shipped a bunch of hogs. I got 90 cents a pound for them. All right? Corn is going to be cheaper going forward than it was. I'm glad that I unloaded the hogs that I did. And what did I do? I didn't take that money and roll it back into hogs. I diversified my farm portfolio. So I'm sure a lot of people here know about diversified investment portfolios. It's the same thing in farming, that you need to maintain a diversified farm portfolio so that you're not caught off guard when the price of fertilizer goes crazy. That these guys were mortgaged to the hilt to buy fertilizer last December, and where did the cost of fertilizer go? It just kept going down. You know, if you would have waited until the time you were planning to buy your fertilizer this spring, you'd have saved, you know, especially on the guys that plant thousands of acres, they would have saved a boatload of money. But what happened? Well, there you go. You didn't see it coming. So this is true. Deanne, my wife here, said, you know, you should get off the farm and get a hobby. So I went down to the local gym, and I said to the owner, I said, I should come down here and help train some of your guys because I've got a lifetime experience wrestling livestock. And he says, well, you're a nobody. You know, we don't need your help. And I said, well, let's get in the ring. Let's see how little I know. Well, he didn't see it coming. I led with this photo last year. This is 2015. We had let this set fallow in 2013 when we got it, because there was a disagreement with the in-laws about what we were going to do. And then we no-tilled corn, sunflower beans, corn into this. And at this point in the spring, we walked through here and we realized that we had something special here that we did not intend. This is diversity at its genesis. You can't really tell that this is going to be something special unless you really go in there and start looking around. There's trees growing in all these rows. And where did all that seed come from? It blew in. So we have maples and oaks and birch and all kinds of things. You can see there's ragweed, all kinds of ragweed coming in here. There's some of your clump grasses, and this eventually became a lot of ragweed and a lot of goldenrod. And now there's no ragweed and there's no goldenrod, and we didn't do anything about it. And it just happened that way because of how things evolve on this particular land. So you should be aware that things are always going to be evolving. And regenerative, I even wrote this part, regenerative ag is a transitional process. That what you start with today is not going to be what you have tomorrow or the next year or the year after that. You need to know it's going to change. So don't be too caught up with being all in on, I need to make this property something different today, because if you're patient and a little bit ingenuity, you're going to have, so this is this spring, and this is 2015. All right? Way up there, see the house, and you can see that there's a different species of tree. Okay, the house is over there. These are all box elders, where we first started running our hogs. Turns out box elder really doesn't mind being rutted around. There can be a ton of pressure on a box elder tree, and it's still going to maintain. Turns out we didn't even need to break into a lot of this in the back here. So this is just continuing to develop and evolve, and it's money in the bank. That this is an untapped resource that we're slowly working our way into. One of the other things about this is, when it was still kind of virgin, I went with the bulldozer and I cut some paths in here, knowing that I'd eventually want to put fence lines in there to break these paddocks up. The house over here, so this corner over here, that's a 1 acre lot. Okay, so this is about 200 feet across, and it narrows a little bit. So these paddocks are not a full acre, they're more like a half acre. And this is where we started with the hogs, and we slowly allowed them in here. But there's been hogs in this area since 2017, 2018, and we have not had to move them out of there because we've been able to match the pressure to what's growing in there. So one of the goals of our farm has been to create as much native habitat as possible and still maintain some sort of profitable business model. A lot of people have been talking about that what works for me is not what's going to work good for you, but one thing that's universal is that you need to be observing what's going on so that you can make the changes necessary. And so here we were planting rhubarb. This is 2016, and you can see that these are trees growing in here with that'd be goldenrod and some ragweed and stuff like that. We did not know that this was going to be the right way to plant rhubarb. The rhubarb's actually planted here. It's not planted in the mounds of mulch. The mounds of mulch are just there so that it's going to keep the weeds down. Turns out in our sandyish soil that having micro swales for everything is how you want to manage your water. That's a little bit more permaculture than regenerative ag, but it's still a helpful tool for people that have issues with, you may have clay soil where you're going to be doing it the opposite. Your plants are going to be on top of the hill and shedding the water away, where here I'm doing the opposite, where I actually want to funnel the water down to where I'm putting the plants. So this is 2 years apart. Okay? We sold this to a company that made Shrub. It's a vinegar, non-alcoholic beverage that people use. They add this vinegar, flavored vinegar to like a soda water, and people drink this stuff. They bought a ton of rhubarb from us. Okay, so this little garden, okay, we picked $4,000 worth of rhubarb out of it. And what did it cost us to do this? Well, rhubarb is easy to divide, as Russ knows. He's like, he He's like, hey, can you send me some rhubarb plants? I'm like, I got a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to just throw out. I'll just throw it in a box and send it to you. Well, what do I owe you for it? And I'm like, well, nothing. Here's some rhubarb. As far as the profitability, and this is where I didn't see it coming, all right? And this is, I was on the end throwing the punch on this one, because now we're selling $5,000 worth of rhubarb every year, and it costs us nothing but labor. This is thick rhubarb in here. I can pick 100 pounds of this in an hour, and I sell it for $2 a pound, okay? $200 an hour picking rhubarb. Laughing all the way to the bank because my father-in-law is saying, what are you doing planting all that rhubarb out there? No one's going to buy that. Well, turns out there's a lot of people that like rhubarb that don't have the ability to pick their own rhubarb, or possibly they don't have access to where it's growing. But in Wisconsin, everybody's got rhubarb in their backyard, but we're still selling out of it. Didn't see that coming. All right. Covered that. All right. We're consistently observing and planning the next step of our farm's sweet spot. All right. What's the sweet spot? I don't know. Okay. Next year, when people are calling and asking for rhubarb, or they're calling and asking for raspberries, or whatever they're looking for next year, because the shrub people came out of nowhere. All right. And there was a winery, came out of nowhere. We found a distribution just down the road from us that said, we will take all the rhubarb that you can pick early spring. And I laughed, and I'm like, all right, well, we're going to find out next year. I'm going to bring you guys by the pallet. But it must be palletized, it must be bundled in 1-pound packages, and it must be in waxed boxes in 30 pounds each. All right, well, that's a lot of messing around. It's not just as simple as picking it out of the garden, so maybe I've doubled my labor inputs, and I have some other inputs with the boxes and all that stuff, and maybe I have to hire my wife in her off hours to help me bundle it. But now we have possibly an unlimited source where they're going to take this. It's called Wisconsin Food Hub, and they help other small farmers distribute their products to grocers and stuff like that. You'd be surprised how many grocers or distribution centers will take palletized goods. As long as you are bringing it to them how they can redistribute it, they'll take this stuff. All right? Didn't see that one coming either. We have a lot different opportunities now than we did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we didn't know which way to turn. We were barking up the wrong tree. I mean, we thought we wanted to do a bunch of things. This is further on here, but I'll get to it right now. You get that seed catalog in the spring. You open up the seed catalog, and it's, I want to plant this, I want to plant that. You need to stay disciplined to make sure that when you're out there growing stuff, that you're not just, well, let's not go there because people are going to look at the baby pigs. All right. Don't get too carried away with your seed catalog and growing a ton of different things. Be disciplined on growing things that not only grow well in your soil, grow well in your area, but also you have a market for them. All right, this was a little over ambitious to start our little rhubarb patch here, but without having planted this much, I would not have the ability to produce a ton of rhubarb just to get in the door where the opportunity is. So sometimes you got to step outside and you got to take a little risk. Biodiversity is not the only diversity that a small farm or family farm should have. All right? A lot of people are talking about biodiversity, talking about the different forages in your field. If you want to be out there early in the springtime grazing your animals, you're going to need some cool weather forages, so you get that stuff out of the ground and growing, and then you need the other type of forages for your late season stuff. But that's not the only diversity you need to have. You need to have diversity that's, okay, we got rhubarb, well, we got bacon. All right, so now we have we're in multiple markets. We're not tied to livestock. We're not tied just to rhubarb. That everyone should be diversified in your revenue sources. So again, you're not at the mercy of market fluctuations. If you were selling corn last year, you made out. But if you were buying corn, it was not good paying $8 a bushel for corn. So we've all heard the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. This is the same line of thinking, that if you saw the price of eggs go up last year and you doubled the size of your flock, and now all of a sudden eggs are $1 a dozen, well, if you bought a bunch of chicks, by the time they're laying, the price of eggs have already come back down. So that didn't make any sense to do that. The price of eggs were up. Everyone was looking for hens. What should he have done? Sell your flock of hens. Get out of eggs completely. Let someone else take the fall when the market comes down. All right? This is that same field. So this area has had pigs on it continuously for 7 years. And Russ was asking earlier about how to get pigs to stop rooting. Well, and don't hold me to this, the more you move pigs, the more you're teaching them to root. I want the fresh ground. I want the fresh ground. And what's his name? Matt? Is that what it is? Who was up here first when I walked in here? Where was he? The gentleman with the other hogs. He was saying about, what's that? Nick. Oh, sorry. That pigs are going to root. They're going to be after. If you're providing them a treat, they're always going to be looking for a treat. Well, on this area, it's been beat enough that they're really not interested in turning that soil over. They come out here, they graze, and they're just happy to be in a pig paradise. I call this a pig paradise because I consider this, I could just go out there and just sit. Deanne wants to come help with chores. What does she do? I put the feed down, all the piggies run up to her, and she's like, oh, piggies, and it's just such a wonderful feeling to have started here and now be here. Because this is everything. That you can't see it, but there's all kinds of nests of birds. Talking about ducks eating bugs and using birds to control insects. I can go out here in the middle of summer and they're farrowing. There is no fly strike. I'm not having to deal with biting flies everywhere. There are flies, obviously, at the farm, but I don't have this overwhelming problem of insects. Diversify, all right? Sell a bunch of sows, buy a sawmill, all right? No joke. Where's my sawmill right now? It's being rented out, all right? We keep this thing rented out, $500 a week. And what do? I go set it up, show the guy how to run it. They pay for the blades. I mean, this is the best paying job I've ever had because I don't have to do anything. All right, yeah, well, some idiots like to drop stuff on there and bend the rails, but I'm pretty handy, so we straighten it out. Diversify when you have the opportunity. If you have a windfall, like beef prices are pretty good right now, so I'm sure a lot of guys are selling some beef. If I had a bunch of beef cows, well, I'd be selling every which one of them that I didn't like. If she ever looked at me bad, she'd be on the trailer right now. And I'd be taking that money and I'd be buying a sawmill or I'd be investing it in some other avenue. Or even better yet, I'd be buying land. Okay, land is part of a diversified portfolio anyways, not just a diversified farm portfolio, which I don't even know anyone I've never even heard anyone talk about a diversified farm portfolio. Part of that should be reinvesting in buying land. My father's father, every time he had a kid, he would go buy someone's farm. Or at least that was the joke in the township. He had 13 kids, okay, 11 of which survived, but so he bought up everyone's farm. We grew up 4 miles from where they milked the cows, and it was still on, Grandpa's farm because he was always acquiring land whenever he had the opportunity. it makes me very sad that I was building silos in 1999, okay, when I graduated high school, and I watched all these farmers take their money from a good year when milk was up, and they'd build a silo, or they'd buy a tractor instead of squirreling that money away or doing something else with it. Price of milk coming down, next thing you know, farm's gone. Well, what happened to the farm? Well, they had to sell it just to pay the bank off, or they'd sell the herd to pay the bank off. So just, don't be Jason here. Don't be loudmouth Jason here picking a fight with everyone when you don't really know what's going to happen in the future. Here's another diversification. That is a semi-load of sawdust. What you doing paying $1,000 for a semi-load of sawdust? Wow. I have never picked raspberries like this in my life. And I thought for sure that this stuff would break down. I spread this, 4, 5, maybe 6 inches thick over an area, suppress all the weeds. The raspberries are growing crazy. I thought I had messed up because the first couple of years after this, the raspberry plants were just growing so much. You're talking about the light that they need. Also, nutrients play an important part of fruiting. They had so much grow available to them that the plants didn't even want to fruit. They just wanted to explode everywhere. Well, all of a sudden they start producing fruit like this. And that's a little exaggerated because that's Deanne's hand and it's zoomed up. But these things set these heavy clusters of these huge berries. And, well, it cost me $1,000. It might last me a lifetime. That fertility, that area might have that sawdust, that residual from that sawdust in it, when it's time for me to become part of the soil. There is nothing wrong with planting monocultures. Okay, there is a place for everything. This was a disturbed area that when we had the bulldozer in here, we were disturbing some area for making the driveway. This is what was in the soil. I didn't plant any of this. All this clover came up. And instead of being like, oh man, what a terrible thing I've done by having a monoculture of clover here, well, let's run the pigs in there because they're going to love that. Diversification isn't just what you have as products, it's what you do as an individual. All right? I'm not necessarily a machine operator by trade, but I grew up around machines, so I'm able to operate heavy machinery. We rented this for a week for $2,500, and I did $10,000 worth of work with it. I also got the county to come out and tell me to stop doing what I was doing because I opened up too much land after they gave me permits to do, no joke, we had 5 people out before we put this driveway in, and then they're like, oh, you didn't have the right permits. I'm like, well, the Army Corps of Engineers was here, and they said I could. This was one of the best ideas we had. This is County Road B here, and it's a shortcut between US 10 and Interstate 39 up there in Wisconsin. And everyone knows, oh, that's the place with the pigs by the road. All right, we had pigs in this area for 1 year, and then we planted a rhubarb patch. This is all stuff we planted the same year. So that's 1 year's growth. And again, what a efficient revenue source. That per square foot, in some of this, we're picking £1 per square foot each time we pick it. That's $2 a square foot. Multiplied across acres, a guy could be silly. In 2015, Theodore Pavelski died, all right? I grew up next to this guy. This guy was one of my mentors and the king of diversification. All right, this guy did maple syrup. He grew a couple acres of potatoes. He milked 20 cows. This guy did everything. He had a backhoe. Anyone that needed a hole dug, that's part of being diversified also, that if you got a piece of machinery, get out there, get it rented. And here he is. on an oxygen tank out there telling his kids what to do. I mean, this guy here is, not that I want to be in his condition that he was there. 10 years prior, a round bale crushed him on his loader. And there he is. Won't stop. More diversification. Not a good idea, all right, but we were trying. We were, I'm glad we didn't go all in and buy 100 of these stupid things, all right? This is plenty enough to know that sheep is not, for the amount of inputs, amount of time input, that sheep are not going to be, these are registered Icelandics. Yeah, you might get $400 or $500 for one of them babies there, and they do throw triplets, so it's not a losing enterprise, but man, sheep are just a pain. We had a handful of hens, and I decided it was going to be a good idea to build an incubator out of an old refrigerator. And then I just started buying fertile eggs, and we were hatching them by the hundreds. And we sold 1,000 because that's what's allowed by law without permits. We sold 1,000, exactly 999 of these that year. And we were selling poults for $10. And if you have the right type, that you can actually get what they call a sex link, so that they have the right color coding, so you know what a pullet is. So if you want to get rid of the boys at this stage, or if you have ethnics that'll take them for $5 as soon as they're big enough to make soup out of them. This was kind of our aha moment as to, we don't have to grow corn. And I wrote a poem about it, okay, back then, because father-in-law's like, no, the land's been rented out, it's going to stay corn and beans as long as I'm alive. I said, well, my wife's name's on the title. We're not going to grow corn, Ron. So this is the aha moment. Next was the Muscovy duck. Ferocious. We do have problems with predators. That's why we don't have chickens anymore. But we still have Muscovy ducks because they are ferocious. Not only are they ferocious, but they're a wild stock that she will hatch out. Every one of these hens will hatch out a dozen or 15 of these babies and go eat mice to feed her babies. Have you ever seen ducks, flip over a piece of plywood and your ducks come and run and eat all the mice? Muscovy ducks, I think that I said this last year, that if you're going to raise any type of fowl and you have predatory problems, Muscovy ducks is probably a good place to start. That was a while ago. Bottle calves were free that year, which they can be at certain times of the year in Wisconsin, because in January and February, they'll die before they make it to the sale barn. So what are you going to do with a whole bunch of your bull calves? They just hit them in the head with a hammer and throw them out. Not too far from this place, I had a picture I didn't put in here of us in the car, an old Buick, with bottle calves in the back of it driving home. All right, so I also like the tether. Even if they're not on the tether all the time, I like to keep a rope around their neck, just so that if they wander too far, they get hung up somewhere. So here's 2018 maybe, and we're fencing in this area to run the hogs in it. Being flexible to take advantage of opportunities. When the price of a cow goes up, you sell your cows. When they're going for $300, you're buying. You're down there every night with your trailer, and you're buying every single one of them. Because this cow here produced, she was milking 5 gallons a day on 2 good teats for 2 years. We bought this cow, I milked her for 2 years. Registered Jersey. We tried AI her a couple times, didn't take. And then we sold her for $1,000 worth of hamburger. That's called taking advantage of opportunity. That's being diversified right there, that you know when to take advantage of something. Well, there's a pile of rhubarb. That took me all day. I mean, I'm not as young as I once was, but I still can pick a pile of rhubarb. And there's Ronald up there. Ronald's over there getting $15 an hour cash on rhubarb he said that I wouldn't be able to sell. So this was a picture I used last year. These are box elders with oysters. So now we got a hog pasture with a bunch of box elder trees that eventually we can use those trees if we want to turn back into crops. If we ever do find an opportunity to go back to a row crop that would be more our style, we can always cut these trees down, inoculate them with mushrooms, and we've got that revenue source. Everyone's got to have pictures like this on their phone, where you're out there and you're like, man, did that all come out of one pig? And it just goes to show you, just like, there was a question earlier about how much grain and how much forage do these animals eat? Well, we don't withhold grain from our animals, from our pigs specifically, because pigs are monogastric, meaning they need a different type of forage than your cows or your goats. These sows still get 6-7 pounds of grain a day, and the more grain you feed them, the more forage they eat. If you withhold the grain, they don't have the energy to go out and forage as much, or at least that's what we found. So shiitakes. This picture's, I don't know, maybe 4 years old, and these logs are probably 4 years old, and we're still picking mushrooms off of these. These are a bur oak, and like Russ said, that the red oaks, the bur oaks, the black oaks, that the bark peels off and they disintegrate, so you don't get as the longevity as you do out of a white oak. And there is a flavor difference, that a white oak is I think it's a more mild flavored mushroom than a bur oak. My parents retired and moved to Hawaii and ended up managing a coffee farm. We went out there to visit them on their coffee farm, picked a bunch of coffee because they said, yeah, go ahead, pick some coffee. Well, they didn't know. Wrong son to tell that to. We picked a pile of coffee, took it down to the local mill, had this milled up, and the owner's like, where's your farm? Well, we don't have one. I ended up going back and working 8 weeks for this guy, all right? They were throwing out 5% of their crop because of this bean borer, which was poking holes, making the stuff float in their big processing. They're processing 6,000, 7,000 pounds of this a day, and they're just tossing it. It's a floater, it's gone, it's gone. I said, oh, can I keep the floaters? Yeah, go ahead. Took them back to my parents' place, running them through. Turns out, guess what? There's 2 halves to every cherry. One of the halves is still good, and this is Kona, all right? At the end of 8 weeks, I had a literal pile, a pickup truck load of coffee that I'd saved that he was going to throw out. And we run it through his equipment to check the test weight on it, and he says, Ryan, I can't let you have that. So now he sends me coffee whenever I want it. But he was not able to have the mentality of being diversified, where take your stuff, if it's not running through your fancy equipment, maybe see if it'll run through a little bit older style equipment that might be a little more efficient. We like good coffee. This is innovation right here. That right there is oxygen hose. Ted Pavelski's oxygen hose, because when you're on Medicare, they just keep sending it to you if you need oxygen hose. And he's an old farmer. He was using the same oxygen hose for 5 years. Clear a little area here so the bag doesn't get a hole poked in it. This cost me 25 cents to put 2 taps in that maple tree. In 2013, we made 100 gallons of maple syrup. Not fun. That was a lot of work. It takes 50 gallons of red maple sap to make a gallon, so we collected 5,000 gallons of sap and cooked it down. It was a good experience, but I don't know if I'm going back to maple syrup anytime to be diversified. If we did, it would be reverse osmosis, it would be box elder, and it would also be on vacuum collection lines so that you're not dealing with all of the labor inputs. I got a lot of grief for this, okay? Posting pictures of my pork chops. Everyone's like, that ain't pork, or that ain't red wattle, or whatever it was. And this is by accident, all right? We had a gilt that didn't breed. She was probably 14, 15 months old when we butchered her. Turns out that if you let them go long, yeah, you're gonna have 15% waste in fat, okay, but you have way more than 15% more in awesomeness, all right? No one talks about finishing hogs. Everyone talks about finishing cattle. I mean, a grass-fed animal is gonna be 24 months minimum before you're sending it to market, all right? Why would you send a hog to market at 6 months? Especially if you can not force feed it on a bunch of high protein. All of our pig feed is 12% protein, believe it or not. And you come out with, well, that is depression era. That right there is my mother's, let's see here, not grandfather, but great uncle. I think this is 1934, and he's raising these purebred Durocs. And this was legend in our household about the Durocs that made the farm through the Depression, all right? Not necessarily diversified, but having a bunch of hogs at that time allowed them to carry on so that the farm was able to do more things later on. Sometimes you need to be a specialist at some things if it calls for you to be a specialist at some time. If the market's good on hogs, well, stay with the hogs until it's not. This is a sow that we butchered, and I don't know what her hanging weight was, probably like 400 pounds. And this just shows you that you, especially if you take a sow, all right, you don't butcher her right away. Give her 2-3 months on good feed to let her get some of that fat back. And, oh, no, all right. I mean, porterhouse. Throw these things on the grill. You know, tell people that that's a Jersey steak, all right? Which I did. And people say, man, it's the best beef I've ever had. Truth. Absolute truth. That they, no idea. All right? Pork steak. This is organic, high percentile clover baleage. So this is high moisture. When we don't have pasture available, we are always trying to provide this. And this is not, you know, this is not from them using their paws. They don't carve that out of there with their paws. They carve that out of there with their teeth. Mostly because this is a frozen block of, you know, because it's high moisture and it's probably 20 below when I took this picture, that they're gnawing on this bale of hay and eating this. I figured it out that our sows were consuming, you know, 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds of this bale a day, which is kind of incredible considering they're a monogastric animal, that they would be choosing to eat that much forage. Uh-oh, I'm out of clips. Oh no, how much time do I have left? I'll tell you guys some stories. What do we got on time?
Hang on. You were playing dead. You're on. Yeah, it's dead. You got a red light.
Got a red light?
You can do questions. You can still talk on it. Can I? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right, questions?
But I got a page left of jokes.
Do what?
I got a page left of jokes.
Page left of jokes. Hang
Yeah.
on to them just a second. Hang on to them.
Ryan, I got in just a little after you started. Did you plant those trees, or did they just come up? You go back to your 2015 picture. Well, Did you plant the trees, or did they use?
This right here is the result of a custom-built no-till. Okay, so what I did is I took an old Nissan pickup truck and I took the rubber off the wheels, and in the springtime when it was soft, I went and drove down all the corn stubble that was left from the row cropper. And as I was driving down, I had bags full of seed next to me, and I'm throwing it out the window like this as I'm driving down. All right, so these left micro swales. So the indentation was probably a good 4 or 5, maybe 6 inches deep in spots that was gathering leaf litter and all kinds of debris. And as these seeds blew in there, it was just the perfect place to grow these trees. You can't tell it. These trees are in rows.
Did you plant them?
No, that just blew in. What's that? I ended up with that. Yep, and that was something I didn't see coming.
Yeah. Other questions?
Why do you have your sap bag on the ground?
The sap bag is because holders cost money. And we 100 gallons takes, 100 gallons of syrup takes 5,000 gallons of sap, and if you get 5 gallons out of each tap, okay, you need to put 1,000 taps. You got to drill 1,000 holes. If you got to go out and buy a spout or spigot or spile or whatever they're called, you're going to have quite a bit of investment to scale up. And what did I have? I had time on my hands that spring, and it was a good year. You can tell a good year's coming because you had plenty of rain the previous year, and that's being diversified. I didn't tap any trees last year. Well, I knew it was going to be a terrible year to tap trees.
I don't have a question, but I was going to give you an idea. You may have already thought about it, but you have the sawmill, and you bought sawdust in the past. So now if you went to go get your sawmill from a customer that rented it from you and they didn't want the sawdust, there's free sawdust for your strawberries.
Yes.
Or your raspberries, sorry.
Yes, that is a thing, that there's not just sawdust, but there's the slab wood, which is something that we've experimented with, using just the whole slab wood as a like, instead of landscaping fabric, that you can tier your slab wood right down on top of weeds and smother it right out. So absolutely, that a sawmill, if you have timber on your land, man, that thing was $3,500 delivered to my door in a crate. I mean, not overly expensive. And when you're shopping for sawmills, don't go buy the expensive one. Don't buy the cheapest one, because you're going to buy the 20-inch wide log one, and you're going to have a 24-inch log, and you're saying, shoot, I should have got the 26. We should have got the 30, because that would open me up to being able to saw live edge stuff. Everyone wants live edge countertops, and you need 30 inches to do that, which we can't.
Next. Anybody else? All right, you got time for 2 jokes.
2 jokes?
Yep.
Well, we tell a lot of people that your pigs need discipline, and well, what do you mean by that? Well, you got to crack them on the snout, and people get a lot of, they don't want to have to discipline their animals, but I tell them, man, I have never hit a hog harder than my dad hit me. Come on, that was funny. That was funny, because it's true.
All right, anything else?
There is, we did bring maple syrup and raspberry syrup that we were going to, if anyone wanted to try some of the stuff that we got off the farm, but we're looking for little tiny cups. Turns out that Walmart and no one sells little tiny Dixie cups. Did you know that?
How about waffles and pancakes?
For breakfast?
Yeah.
Are you guys doing breakfast?
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey.
You're up. You're up.
We'll come up with something.
All right.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Thanks.